In a world of capes and lunatics, gods and monsters, there are those that protect us. Or are there those that protect us from those who say they protect us? The TVA or all the variants? Or are they all one and the same? Who knows? I just know. Enough said. I am your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me as always is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz, welcome back. I am back from my long week of exile at summer vacation. Went to the Chicago. You can't even see it because it's an invisible cup. Woo! But it's my silver cup from the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, where I took my family. And
what was the coolest thing at the Museum of
to
Science and Industry?
The coolest thing? Well, they have a Marvel exhibit right now, which was sold out, so I couldn't get into.
Oh.
But they did have, some nice statues of Marvel characters. There was a lot of neat things to see and do, and they have a big train. They have they have a submarine that I did not get to go to. I wanted to, but actually it's very tight, so I don't know if I could have fit into it. They have an old 727 that you go into, and you can walk through the cabin, and it's cool because they have the display of here is a typical airline service, but it's like all 1970s stuff. So it's like the pull tab can of Coke, and they've got really nice things. It's like, oh, you don't get those on airplanes anymore.
That's cool.
That's just the great. And they have like the coach section and the first class section, so you can see the difference. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Highly recommend it. Going to also saw a Toledo Mudhens game while we were gone. But we just got back last night, and it's just been, this is our recuperation day before going back to work. But we're not here to talk about my vacation. We're here to talk about Loki, Season 1, Episode 4, Nexus Event. Frayed nerves and paranoia infiltrate the TVA as Mobius and Hunter B-15 search for Loki and Sylvie. Director of this week is Kate Herron. Eric Martin, and let's go to, just want to get everyone's proper credits here because Eric Martin gets our written by, Michael Waldron gets our created by, and then we just give good old Loki getting that created by credit to Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, and Larry Lieber. Yes, so this one opens up with a young girl Loki, our young variant Loki, who has the unfortunate problem of being born a girl, is what is the argument. Although it's interesting.
Is it?
Because, well, you see, that's the question. Now,
I didn't get that sense. I thought it was because of her rebellious streak, her strong-willedness, that in the future they saw that she could be sort of so obsessed with something that she wouldn't be able to be pulled away, and it leads to something that branches off a timeline that they can't prune. So they needed to get to her now.
There's the argument. So here's actually where her being a girl actually does cause a problem, which is that because Asgard is a patriarchal society, there is never going to be this idea that she could attain the throne of Asgard. Without her being in competition with Thor, she may never create that negative rivalry that leads to all of the actions that Loki takes, that leads to Thor and the Avengers and all of that kind of stuff. That without her having that quest to be king, because in this, it seems like all her real quest is that she wants to be a hero, like Valkyrie. Yeah, and Valkyrie saves the day. And that's sort of what it is. Now, you can look at it as, it's because she wants to be heroic, and that's the thing.
Isn't that all kids, though? Isn't that?
Well, yes, but the idea is that because arguably Loki wanted to be a Valkyrie too, that they always had that desire to be that heroic being. But because Loki had this other aspect of wanting to compete with her brother for the throne of Asgard, that is what leads Loki down his dark path.
And maybe that's
if
not enough
throne
of a
Asgard
challenge to create the kind of Thor that reality needed, since he and Loki's are simply springboards for other characters to attain their herodom.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. In fact, we even get this idea in this episode where the idea that, as she said, that, she was born the goddess of mischief. And the idea is that the universe creates Lokis expressly because it wants to be free of the TVA. That the TVA is trying to hold back the multiverse, but in truth, the multiverse ain't having it. That it's trying to control this river, and it's in its own way. It's like, as they always say about, the light versus dark side of the Force. That there's no light or dark side of the Force. There's simply the flow of the Force, and if you try to control it, that is what always leads to madness and anger, because it's trying to control this force of the universe that is meant to be this flow and this ebb and this destruction as well. Because you get this idea of, but what if these timelines collide? What if you have all these problems? Like, well, yes, I know that's part of the natural flow of time. That one universe.
It's like that famous Dr. Ian Malcolm phrase: "You can't contain life; it will break out violently sometimes if necessary." Life finds a way.
It will, and Loki's find a way.
Right.
And that is why Lokis are so dangerous, because Lokis, as Nexus beings, and I think that's something we're going to come to at the end of this, is that we are going to get something of a collapsing of universes, but we're going to see this idea that Nexus beings like Loki will simultaneously exist in all their forms at all times. So that we have, so that we will see Sylvie as a version of Loki, and our Tom Hiddleston Loki, and maybe any of the Lokis we saw when they were running through them, like, Tour de France Loki. Collect them all, kids. And they're just cycle through all these different types of Lokis that they could be at any time, and they will take the form they need to be the Loki the universe needs at that moment. I think it may definitely be leading to that bigger role for Loki in the greater Marvel Cinematic Cosmos. At least that's my hope. I don't know.
Makes sense.
But we see that Sylvie gets taken by Renslayer, and I don't remember if they give us what her number designation is. I don't think they call her Renslayer at that time. But we also see that, in classic, precocious child, Black Widow, teenage girl, superhero fashion, immediately, bites her, steals her tempad, and runs out of the courtroom, which is interesting, but also gives us this interesting take on this, where this was Renslayer's first failure, arguably, and maybe it's funny, there's this interesting argument you can make that maybe she, failed up the ladder, that because she had lost this Loki, she got promoted to judge. Because it's like, we really can't have you in the fields. You're just not handling this job. We need to get that guy on that jet ski. Bring him in here. He'll be good for it. And that's the thing. And this is this mystery. And again, not something that we're going to get a lot of elaboration on. We just know that that's where it starts. But that obviously this is stuff that people don't really know or is unaware of, because as we will recall, while they were searching for this Loki, it never becomes that this was the Loki that Renslayer lost, that this was the female Loki.
Right.
Because one has to imagine that that's a story that exists if it hadn't been actively erased by someone, possibly Renslayer. So I do think there's more that we're going to be seeing here, and we'll talk about that a bit more tomorrow or in the next show, because there is a lot more we get in the next show. But at this time, we just have Loki and Sylvie waiting for the rock to hit.
Right.
And we see Mobius just searching anywhere. They know they're hiding in an apocalypse. But of course, if you're in an apocalypse, nothing can change because it's an apocalypse. So they're just desperately looking for anything. And then what triggers the branching event is something. Get your head out the gutter there, Mozz. No.
My thought was that what caused that branching was not that they had feelings for each other, but that the prediction for a Loki is that he will die alone. And in this moment, he was about to not die alone. Not only was he about to not die alone, but he was standing there holding hands with somebody that truly understood him, understood his plight, and took stock. And that is against what a Loki is supposed to go. And that's such a gigantic branch from what Lokis are supposed to do that I think that's what caused the red alarm to go off.
Yeah. The only argument I will make against that is that Loki, well, again, assuming he did die, Loki didn't die alone in Endgame or in Infinity War.
How so?
Because Thor's there with him.
Oh yeah, Thor's watching that happen, right? Yeah.
Yes, because he dies before.
Oh, then maybe that's not really a real Loki. Maybe that's a projection.
Yeah, I mean
Loki.
that's
because
that
he
could
would have showed up
maybe,
if that was a real Loki.
Yes, arguably, I actually think here's my actual thing, and I think it goes back to that idea I was saying about Nexus beings. Who are these beings that exist that are essentially created by the universe because it wants to break free? That, in this same way that beings like, in the comic books, beings like the Phoenix and Galactus, move through and destroy things and empower things and break things and then new things get rebuilt. These Nexus beings are doing that on this dimensional level, always existing in this thing. But what happens is if two Lokis connect, it is about this connection that's the Nexus event. Because when the Lokis focus their powers, suddenly they can rewrite reality. So once they agree, and for what it's interesting, if you go into that idea of hex powers and the altering of probabilities, this is essentially what is happening here, because yes, it does cause a branch in the timeline expressly because they survived, but they survived because the branch in the timeline occurred, which told the TVA to come and rescue them. And it's all of these different layers running into each other, because we know that Sylvia has already told Loki that everyone at the TVA is, in fact, a variant. And because they are all variants, Loki can whisper that word to Mobius. And that is that little thing you tell someone that just sits in the back of their head and that says, am I? Was I? And then, of course, what happens
kind of like when Loki's about to walk through that metal detector to see if he's a robot or not. But wait, what if I am a robot?
Yes, well, then it'll melt you from the inside out. And I like, but I like the idea that is the Nexus event. It's not even that it was a Nexus event on Lamentus. It's a Nexus event because two Lokis have connected, and they will make it so they can get off. And the way they can, in the easiest way.
And just evidenced by the next episode, Lokis don't agree on much.
No. And, well, no, they all agree on one thing. Betrayal! But we'll get to that next episode, because that's a really great episode. But this one, this is our broccoli episode, and I like broccoli.
Are you kidding me? The last one was the broccoli episode. This is like the gourmet mashed potatoes with garlic and butter folded in,
Yes. I know. I'm just saying the steak is tomorrow, and then dessert.
Fair enough.
But we got to get, because this is great, because we get the timeline diverging. We get our heroes rescued. We get Lady Sif back, because that is Loki's memory prison. And this is actually based on, and it's interesting because it makes you wonder, is this supposed to be the myth of Loki cutting Sif's hair? Which is, it's actually a harvest myth in Norse culture, which is the idea that Sif's hair was originally golden blonde, and it was the golden wheat of the field. And he steals her hair, and that, of course, causes all those kind of problems until she can get her hair back. And, because he can't get her hair back, he has, I believe, dwarves fashion black raven hair for her, and that's why Sif has dark hair, not blonde hair. But in the original myths, if I recall correctly, she had blonde hair because she was the harvest goddess of the grain. Fun facts that I may be misremembering. And come on, write to me. Tell me how wrong I am, people. That's how I got this job in podcasting, by telling people how wrong they were. Certainly, I can't be right about everything, even though I am the professor. So that's interesting. And we get this nice thing. And what I love about this scene is we get this and we have to imagine, and this is the thing about it, we have to imagine that this is a compressed thing. I don't think that he's in there for 5 minutes and suddenly has the whole emotional arc that we see. I think that's 2,000 years to him in there, just repeating this one moment over and over again, and trying, much like he says when he says, did you try to use that thing in the first episode to try and get us yes several times? It doesn't work. I'm certain he tried a million different ways to get out of that memory loop, to figure out how he can get out, and all failed before he becomes the dejected Loki that we see. We see
the idea that he goes into this little time loop, and outside that little time loop, time doesn't pass. It could be almost instantaneous, so he buys himself an infinite amount of practice time in regards to any engagement if he were to employ this technique.
Well, I mean, arguably, but the point is that there's no way out. So, I mean, yeah, sure. He might be able to figure it out eventually, but I would imagine it's like Narnia time. The amount of time you're in there is unrelated to the amount of time.
That's what I mean. It's an interesting technology to have in battle. Just time out. I'm going to go into my little subworld here, run a million permutations, just like Doctor Strange, whatever. Figure out what works. I'm going to come back, and I'm going to kick you in the head at this time,
Arguably, that is how Kang conquers the universe.
Oh.
So if you imagine that is the idea that, and it's stuff that's been done in other stories too, the idea of, you see how you lose the battle, and then you come back in time and you win the battle because now you've already lost it. So now you can change your destiny and win the battle. So you can fight the battle as many times as you want, because you always get to go back and start over at the start of the game until you find all the Easter eggs and you find all the hidden things, and ready, repeat. What was that movie with Tom Cruise where he keeps on going back?
Live, die, repeat.
The start of
the Edge of Tomorrow.
Live, die, repeat. Yeah. Edge of Tomorrow. Yeah, and that's the idea that you could do that. That's arguably how Kang conquers time. Although also he has the advantage of way superior technology. Although tellingly, despite having way superior technology and conquering all of time, there's precious little evidence that he's ever actually been able to maintain his hold on anything in the past. He seems to only sort of rule over time from his Chronopolis location in the comics. So exactly what his empire is, it's a little sketchy.
Interesting.
It's like Amazon stock. It says it's worth a lot of money, but is it? It's a bunch of warehouses. What if nobody buys all this stuff?
But that's
does it suddenly become worthless?
Far-fetched, hypothetical. What if it's like that's who we are. If we, as a society, Western culture at the very least, have a religion, it's consumerism. And every time we log into Amazon to see where my package is, that's how we pray.
Yes, exactly. All hail the mighty Bezos. Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, did you hear Branson got to space first?
Yes. It was wonderful. It was beautiful. And Elon Musk looks like he stayed at his house the night before, because that picture they posted the morning before, he's like barefoot, his hair's all ragged, and he's in his kitchen. Like they were just two buddies that like, go, dude. I mean, and that was beautiful. It was really cool to see.
Yes. Well, I knew Branson would be the first, because he's the daredevil.
I love, man.
He's the guy who likes
his little speech from inside the cabin. He's like,
no, not really.
Like, I was just a little kid who had a dream. Look what I did. Imagine what you could do. Look at the world you're inheriting. What can you do? And I was like, man, golly. That's
Well,
beautiful.
it's inspirational. It's
Indeed.
like all royalty when they come to the balcony. It's very inspirational.
Right, but somebody has to do
People
it
still
first.
wave their flags for the queen.
Whatever, whoever,
Yeah.
royalty, whatever
No.
it is. The human species got there. Somebody had to be the first one to do it, so the rest of us can follow.
Yeah.
And collect whatever
I
accolades
agree.
and titles you want. It's an accomplishment for all of us.
I'm not faulting the man. It's not like he dressed like a bat just to beat up people,
Right,
know.
right,
And
right. Right.
To me, that's a bad use of your money. It's like you're just beating up people.
Right.
You could be, reforming politics if you wanted to. Could use that money to buy off these corrupt politicians to do good things. No one ever thinks that. I'm a multi-billionaire, and how can I do the most good when the world's full of corrupt politicians?
The problem with that is the politicians aren't the issue. It's the corporations behind these politicians. You can buy all the politicians you want. That's like saying I'm going to put all the low-level drug dealers in jail. That's not going to solve the problem.
No,
you know what
no.
I mean?
Arguably no. Because here's the thing: governments print the money. So
Right.
if you do not have the government on your
at
side,
the behest of these corporate conglomerates, no?
No, at the behest of the government is the most powerful entity in our society because it's the organizing structure
for the people that are actually, trying to.
Well, arguably, everyone's a puppet. Even the guy who's making the decisions to spend the money. There's lots of puppets, but what I'm saying is that the only thing that has the power of capital is the power of state. Those are the two conflicting forces. That the state is the check on capital, and capital is the check on state. That within this, and that's a free capitalist society. Ideally, yeah. Well, everything's idealized. I mean, honestly, if things worked, we wouldn't even need a TVA to keep the universe running smoothly because everything would just flow in the way it's supposed to. But people make different decisions, and those decisions often derail entire universes. But we do get in this the idea that Loki and Sylvie have been captured. They're both, although we never see what Sylvie's prison is, and it seems like she's just in a regular holding cell.
Right.
There's
the interrogation room.
Yeah. She's not put into a memory prison like Loki. Although they do make the point that they were doing that intentionally to soften Loki up. That this is they're basically waterboarding him is the equivalence, because that's also, when they'd put, at Abu Ghraib, where they would put him in the stress positions and do all these things to soften them up before interrogation. So it had the desired effect. Where Sylvie's just left there, and I think arguably because they want her, they know that it's not going to work, whatever they're going to try. So they're just trying to contain her for right now until they can, prune her from existence. Although, arguably, even if it's like, with what we see in the next episode, like exactly what the plan was is never clear. And it really looks like Renslayer knows this Loki, Sylvie, is more problematic than she wants to admit.
Because Renslayer knows where people go when they're pruned, right? It's not like, they're dead. She knows that she will only go to a world filled with other miscreants that are unhappy with you, So it's like, it's not really the best outcome to send her to the place people get pruned to. That's only going to cause you more problems.
Exactly. And that is the difficult that we face with that. The difficulty we face with that. And I think from Renslayer's perspective, it is just this idea she wants to contain them, but already the cat is out of the bag, because immediately, I believe it's C20, Mobius wants to know what's up with C20. What happened to C20? Where's C20? And they say she had to be, she died. And he doesn't buy it. And this is an interesting thing I think that you get in this is Renslayer tries to put this "we are friends" story on to Mobius, saying we're friends and it's our friendship. I'm trying to protect you and all this kind of stuff. But we see once Mobius knows what's going on, she doesn't even hesitate. She just prunes him, which, as we'll see, opens up another door. And of course, and this is the thing, because we have seen the second episode, or the next episode already. We know, and we don't know at the time. And for all we know right now, you get pruned. But we do see, in this, we also see that, B-15 comes into Sylvie's cell to have Sylvie take her back. Because B-15 already figured out that she's a variant. And needs to know the truth. Because that's the thing. Once the lie starts to fall apart, people need the truth.
Right.
And that is effectively what she does. That is effectively what happens next. Is, B-15 needs to know, goes back there and says, I looked happy. Now, of course, the irony of all this is that B-15, her true timeline self, probably still is happy. That whatever she did that disrupted the timeline probably was not so great that her life ceased, although maybe.
Right, because we do find out in this episode that they do indeed destroy entire realities. It's not like they just prune one little piece of it like a bubble and that.
Well, and again, that
entire reality gets pruned into this place, and Alioth eats it.
Well, yeah, that's next episode. That's
right,
next
but she does say in here, like, they destroyed my whole entire reality. It's not there anymore. Everybody else in that entire reality died or ceased to be, whatever you want to say.
Well, that's the question, and that goes into this idea of what it means to exist. And so, your reality
those lines of memory, those narratives, do not have a sense of belonging to anything anymore.
Well, or is it whatever is affected by the? That's the question.
No. But
here's what I'm going to say.
It seems to me like they make it pretty clear that the entire reality is wiped out. But here's why
I will say that doesn't seem to be the case. And I don't want to go too much into it, but basically, what we see next episode is going to be pieces of things, not entire things. So, like, for example, if an entire timeline
mention
got purged,
is made to it several times.
Well, no. But what I'm saying is, if an entire timeline got purged, this world would be filled with Iron Men, Thors, because there's a Thor in every universe. So when Loki does his little sidestep with the Infinity Stone at the end of Endgame, or in the middle of Endgame,
right,
and they prune that timeline, well, then it's pruning every Thor in that timeline, every Odin in that timeline, every planet in that timeline, every Captain Marvel in that timeline.
Right.
And I think in that idea that everything just dumps into this void space and Elias is able to eat them all, I'm suspect of that.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a tall order.
I'm suspect of that. So I think what happens is that the inciting event gets pruned, and things related to that inciting event get pruned, things that really redirect them. And I think what you get here is sort of the power of urban legend and Mandela effect, in the idea that, yes, that got pruned. Some people maybe have a recollection of it. So it's not that, I went from this universe to that universe. It's like, no, there was just a timeline where that occurred, and that timeline got pruned, and you have memory of that timeline because it is something that you saw, but that's been erased from this reality now. So you are certain you saw it, you're certain you know it, but for some reason it's not there in your mind anymore. So that's a possibility. And we're getting way too much into episode 5. I do want to get back to this because we haven't gotten to the man behind the curtain, which is the big reveal of this episode, which is that, you know what? When they are brought before the time, the timekeepers, and you are being held, and we are holding you against the of the time violation of the sovereignty. The guy with the big mustache face. Yeah, I see you mocking me. We get the big fight because, of course, B-15 comes in and just starts busting heads. And just prior to this, like we said, Mobius gets pruned. And in the big ensuing fight, after B-15 comes in to break people out, and Loki and Sylvie get free, and they just start busting heads. We see Sylvie throw her sword at one of the timekeepers, lopping off its head. Its head falls down, and it's just like, ha 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 ha, in classic supervillain fashion. It was a Doombot the whole time. And they realize they're just animatronic robots. Although, interestingly enough, you do get the other aspect. Speaking of sentient robots, we do get that little bit with Miss Minutes in this, where they're trying to delay Sylvie. Oh no, that's tomorrow. That's next week. Never mind. See, that's the problem when you try to do two at once. You get confused as to what you saw. Yeah. But yeah, so in this one, it really comes down to the fact that it is just a robot. And although, and they're not quite sure what to do, because it's like, for Sylvie, she's worked her whole life to this point.
Right. Yeah. Everything, her whole identity has been about, like, I'm doing the right thing. I need to rid the world of this evil, this oppressive force. And now you realize that all of it was an illusion, that your whole life, everything that you put into, everything that you're about, everything that made you who you are, is based on something that you have no idea what's really going on at all. Who should you really be angry at? Who is at fault? Who can I blame? Who can I, and it's like, what is this world? It's got to be the rug being pulled out of you at such a gigantic scale. It's crazy.
Exactly. And that is exactly what it is the rug has been pulled out and Sylvie is left afloat. And you have this moment where Loki comes to Sylvie to express something to her. And, maybe it's meant to be a reference to, Finn when he's going underneath. He says, "Ray, I have to tell you that," But I don't. And again, that's this question: is he expressing his undying love? Is he expressing something else? Again, I think he's figured out that something about them being together, that connection to another Loki, has a power that they're not quite sure how to unleash, but he knows that's the secret. That the Lokis are the secret to bringing down the TVA. That the Lokis are the problem for the TVA, maybe not for the universe. So, but he gets pruned by Renslayer, and then Renslayer gets beaten up by Sylvie, who basically says, "You're going to tell me everything." And that's the end until we get to our end credits, where we see the the 4 Lokis, called Boastful Loki, Kid Loki, Classic Loki, who is delightful, and of course, Gator Loki, or Loki Gator, or Loki Dial, or Croco Loki. I'm not quite sure if it's an alligator or a crocodile. I actually thought it was a caiman when I first saw it, because it looked a little small.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I was thinking it's a caiman.
Is a caiman a crocodile or an alligator? I think it's a crocodile, right?
I thought a caiman was its own thing. I thought alligators and crocodiles were their own species, and then caimans were another subspecies of. They're all what are called crocodiliads, I believe.
Even alligators?
I believe alligators are crocodiliads. Yeah, because crocodiliads, it's the splayed legs, and it has to do with how they move, if I recall correctly. Because that was one of the things with how they really, because they used to think dinosaurs were crocodiliad, which had them have these splayed out legs, but that would mean that their bellies were always dragging on the ground, and that wouldn't work for as big as they were. And that's when they started to figure out that they were saurians, which were actually more like the avians.
Caimans belong to the same family as the American alligator. They're more distantly related to crocodiles, which belong to a separate family tree under the crocodilia. Interesting.
Yeah. So there we go. Thank you, Wikipedia.
Indeed. Or Google.
Yes, well, yeah, but yeah, so it's the crocodiliad, and then within the crocodiliad, you get your classical crocodiles, which you'll get in Africa and Australia, I believe. I don't know if they have alligators in Africa. They might, but I know
No,
they
I
have
think they're
crocodiles.
predominantly known for having crocodiles.
Yeah, and I know that Australia has crocodiles because of Michael J. Crocodile Dundee. You call that a caiman? That's a crocodile. So yeah. So anyway, yeah. So that's that. That's what they leave on. And there is that question at the end when when you hear the voice say, you need to come with us. There's a lot of speculation that was the crocodile talking. But
that would be cool.
That would be cool. That would be cool. But we'll find out next week. Mozz, any final thoughts on tonight's show?
No, I just thought this episode was the best of the season so far. Absolutely was floored by it.
I think that every episode gets better and better. And I think that when you get to the next episode and then look back, it's like, oh, this is so much better when you see them as a whole and you see them as this fluid thought. And I'm really excited about this, about what we see in Black Widow, which also came out at this time, which we'll be talking about later on tonight. And really, all around, there is clearly something being built that is a really good universe, I think. And I definitely think, as I've said, I really think that, Kevin Feige is the Jim Shooter of film. He is creating a structured universe. And contrary to popular belief, contrary to what James Gunn says as he's trying to push his projects, I don't think he's going to toss out everything that has come before. Although he's gonna play fast and loose with it the same way that you have to whenever you have a big, diverse history of characters that you now need to have into a single continuity.
And also when you want to surprise us. And when you want to see something new and feel something new.
Exactly. All right, my friend. Okay, I think that's everything. I want to give big shout-outs to both the Capes and Lunatics and the Southgate Media Group. If you're listening to this either on Nuff Said under the Southgate Media Group banner or on Full Stream Ahead in the Capes and Lunatics banner, we welcome you. We're all one big happy family here. We encourage you to go down to our show notes, click on the Patreon pages for the representative group, and go get some extra free content. Give us some money if you think it's worth it. I believe we have levels as low as $1, and just give us $1. You got a dollar, spare $1, and it will help out Mr. Doom, Rob Southgate, and the lovely Molly, most talented of the Southgates, who I got to meet on my road trip, so that was great. And likewise, when you're down there, go down to the Amazon link and go to Amazon and buy anything you want. Speaking of Amazon, blessed be Bezos' name. If you would like to pray to Amazon, use our link to do so. And it helps us. It costs you nothing. It helps out the show. And while you're there, check out Pod Live the book, available both in digital download for the current highly advanced technological society in which we live, or paperback in case you want to be ready for the coming apocalyptic event. Then this might survive in the void for Loki to read. Pick up Pod Life the book. New books coming soon, new installments, which hopefully I will write a chapter for. I'm working on it. Just got to get my muse back. All right, Mozz. If someone would like to reach out to you and talk to you about anything that we've talked about, how can they find you?
Oh, they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way that our mothers and fathers once did it at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on Twitter as I live tweet things sometimes when I feel like it, like Legends of Tomorrow, Sunday nights. At 8, maybe, I think. At Charlie Esser. That's CHARLIE. Yes, SER. Look for the 2 E's in the middle.
For quality. Ding.
Thank you, Mozz. Ladies and gentlemen, you have just listened to another episode of Nuff Said. Be safe, be strong, and always watch the skies.